Hey, we talk the ULM game. Jaxson Dart coming back for his senior year and a little bit of Tad Pad conversation as well. Visitors on campus. We got a list from On3 on Twitter. We're going to talk about that a little bit as well. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, and I'm likely the only person that you're going to hear from today that's had an office in the Manning Center and has been in the national media as well. Thank you very much for joining us. Today on the show, we're going to talk about the ULM game. We're going to talk about Jaxson Dart coming back to school. And we asked the question, are we living in the glory days? That's kind of what it feels like right now. As I mentioned, I'm Stephen Willis, and this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on the podcast apps and YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers that make the show what it is. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use the promo code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Fantasy sports, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right. So Ole Miss is going into the ULM game, and you can see down below that Ole Miss is a 37.5-point favorite in this game. We're not going to spend too much time on it. We're going to give you our predictions and stuff like that we're thinking of. But we're not going to go overboard about ULM analysis. Jaxson Dart is the story right now around Ole Miss football. He simply is the story. Going into 2024 and the 12-team playoff and all of what that could mean, Jaxson Dart coming back, there's literally no bad news that can come from Jaxson Dart coming back to school. Everybody's going to ask questions, but what about this player? Or what about this? Or what about that? No, there is no bad news that can come from Jaxson Dart coming back to school. Mike Detillier on the Bo Bounds show a couple of weeks ago talked about Jaxson Dart. If he came back to school, he has a real chance to have a Jaden Daniels type season at Ole Miss. Ole Miss is an immediate contender for the college football playoff 12-team version in 2024 because Jaxson Dart is coming back. Period. End of story. You have Quinshon, you have all these other players. And, there's other players that get that extra COVID year that may end up back at Ole Miss as well. We have to wait and see. I think Jaxson Dart announcing, or I don't guess he announced it, Lane announced it. With that happening, I think that helps Ole Miss recruit the next Trey Harris, because I do think Trey Harris has probably gone to the NFL. He's had the season that he has wanted. He's probably gone to the NFL. But the next Trey Harris, whether that be Deion Smith or somebody in the portal, can see is like, okay, I can go there and I'm immediately going to a playoff contender. It looks like potentially, like I said, I don't know, but if you read the tea leaves and all the sites and all the information's out there, Ole Miss is probably going to get one of Dayton Wade and Jordan Watkins, likely Jordan Watkins, which honestly, that would be a win to begin with if that happens. Obviously, Ole Miss is going to put the full court press on Caden Priestcorn. You have Hudson Wolf. You have a tight end room that is being developed at the moment. And Ole Miss is recruiting at an elite level, especially on the defensive line. We did a video last night about the Ole Miss recruiting class on the defensive line potentially being the best in the country. And even with new flips coming in seemingly every week, you hear about a new name. The rumors going around and people are putting in crystal balls for Charleston Collins. He's a top 100 player. He will be the second-rated player in Ole Miss's class if he decides to flip. This defensive line, if you were talking about a talent disparity against the Georgia Bulldogs, this is how you fix it. This is how you get it to where it needs to be. So I'm pretty fired up about that as well. Let's see. Jerry Moore says, LOL, can we call Darth Vader? That he was on there with Marty Smith that was a conversation piece earlier in the season. I think that's a natural thing, but with the way he wears his eye black and all that anyway, he's going to get called from that. But if you're in the stream, be sure and basically, if you're in the YouTube stream or whatever, post where you're from, okay? I like to know where you're from, so let me know what's going on and where you are. So Jerry Morey is from Pascagoula, Mississippi. Thank you very much for tuning into the live stream this morning, this early Saturday morning for an early morning kickoff. Now, I'm pretty fired up. Now, we're going to spend a little bit of time on ULM. Don't think I'm going to go overboard with it, but this is the reasons why I think Ole Miss is going to win the game today. Ole Miss has better players than ULM, and that sounds simple. That's kind of because it is. Georgia had better players than Ole Miss. I mean, that's 90% of football. For ULM to have a chance to win this game, Ole Miss has to implode on itself. Now, I've seen teams implode on themselves, but that has happened. Ole Miss has the best script writers in the country, so expect a fast start. The first quarters have been dominated by Lane Kiffin and his crew offensively. A fast start against a 2-8 team probably is going to lead to them quitting. And honestly, the same story can be said for the Egg Bowl. We're going to talk about that in just for a minute as well. And bless their heart, but ULM was USM slump buster this season. USM was like either 1-6 or 0-6 going into that game. USM beat them 24-7. And since then, USM's won 3 of 4 or something like that. It's some ridiculous number to the point where they're probably feeling pretty good about their game in Starkville, whether they need to or not. It's a weird situation. If you want to look at my prediction for the game, this is my final prediction for the game. I think Ole Miss is going to take it 48-10. I think we're going to see all 3 quarterbacks. I think Ole Miss is going to get the starters out of the game relatively quickly. They're hoping for a quick start. You're going to see them being aggressive, trying to create explosive plays early, and they're trying to get it to where they can get starters out of the game and get them rested for the Mississippi State game on Thursday. We're going to talk about that during the week as well and where exactly that stands. When we come back, we will talk about essentially the visitors. So thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're just getting started, okay? When we come back, we'll talk about the players that are on campus today. Normally, Ole Miss doesn't recruit so big on a weekend like this. They're coming into town today. We've got to they put a list on Twitter from I think the Ole Miss Spirit had something up. We're going to show you what they put up and just talk about some of the visitors that are in line for the Ole Miss game this in this day. Anyway, today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. It's the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you versus the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more or less than 2 to 6 players on stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks is the most fun that I've had, winning up to 25 times my money this football season, and now I can play during the basketball season too. You just select 2 or more players, like I said, pick more or less than their projected stats, and place your entry. Prize Picks is really simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedon and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. Also, Locked On has its first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts on Locked On and our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national 24/7 streaming channel. So that is pretty cool indeed. Now, this is going to be a decent visit day for Ole Miss. And let me see if I can pull this up. This is just a graphic that I saw on Twitter from 24/7 or On3, one of those. I think it was On3. But these are some of the names that are due into town today. Kamarion Franklin, Zach Berry is the one that put it out. Zach Berry. Give him all the credit in the world for all this. Kamarion Franklin is due back in town. He's been to every home game this year. It's amazing how worried people were about Kamarion Franklin. And then once ever he committed, this dude committed. There was rumors about how he was going to potentially go to Tennessee today, and he did not. He went there. And I have a reason for that I'm going to tell everybody about in just a second. Jeffrey Rush is going to be in Oxford. He's another one that has been a really big recruiter for Ole Miss football. Raymond Collins, the top junior college linebacker in the country. Cameron Clark, a rush in. So you got several defensive linemen and a linebacker, lots of front seven action. Andy Jaffe, who is going to be in town, who has been one of Ole Miss's better recruiters over the course of the season. He's coming up from Clearwater. And then you got Therian Alexander. There's rumors of other 4-stars coming into town as well. But the reason that I think that is going to happen is you notice Braylon Burnside is in town. And Kamarion Franklin, Jeffrey Rush, and Andy Jaffe are three of Ole Miss's best committed recruiters that they have. It's a weird situation with all that's going on. But I think Ole Miss is trying to close the deal with Braylon Burnside this week. I don't think we're going to hear anything, okay? Everything that we're going to get is rumors and innuendo. But just looking at that list, that lets me know that they're likely going to try and hotbox him and at least get him to decide. Remember, Braylon Burnside is announcing at the Under Armour All-American game, and he is going to announce on TV and all of that stuff. There is zero chance that even if all of this works, that he lets the cat out of the bag until then. So understand that nothing's going to happen, but if something does happen at the Under Armour game, it probably happened this weekend. That's what I'm saying. But it should be really interesting to see. Now, real quick, we'll talk about the playoff rankings. Georgia took the number 1 spot. They deserve to. That's the best football team I've seen this season. Ohio State and Michigan, they're going to have their cat fight eventually. Florida State's going to hang around there as well. I think it would be hilarious if some chaos developed for the 4th spot. I see a scenario that Oregon gets in. Florida State loses to Louisville in the ACC championship game. Washington loses to Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game. Oregon sits in the 12th spot. Maybe Texas jumps up from 7 all the way after the Big 12 championship spot. I don't know. The only one that's in that top 10 that does not deserve to be there, and deserves is harsh. I admit that. But I don't like Mizzou at 9. Mizzou is at 9 because they beat Tennessee, and Tennessee is a ranked team. You see them at number 18. But after this weekend and after what Georgia does to them, there's a chance that they're not ranked. And if they're not ranked, because then they'll be at 7-4, all that Missouri can point to is Kansas State. Well, Kansas State has Kansas in Lawrence this weekend. There's a chance that Kansas State is not ranked after this weekend. This time next week, Missouri could have 0 ranked wins. Now, what happens in the playoff rankings if that becomes the case? Does Missouri drop down? Because that's what people need to realize. They are really intentional with how they brand this. They say college football playoff rankings, not polls. Polls consist of up and downs, ebbs and flows. Rankings is in each non-connected ranking from the week before. They're going to look similar because they have been. But if you see after Tennessee gets boat raced a little bit and they're sitting down at the bottom of the list, either they're going to try and manipulate some numbers to keep Missouri in the list, or we'll see exactly what happens. All I know is in a resume battle, Missouri cannot beat Ole Miss. Can't. Ole Miss beat LSU. Missouri lost to LSU. Your only argument, if you are a Mizzou fan, is over a moral victory. And I don't think a bunch of ADs sitting in the room are going to think like that. I just don't. Period. So let's look at the comments for a second. We've got, let's see, Trent Cornelius, love the daily show, Stevens. Give me something to look for. You talk about Ole Miss football. I talk about Ole Miss football every day. That is a brand in the show that whether it's football season or not, I'm going to talk about football every single day. It might just be one segment, and it might be in segment 3, and we might be in the middle of April, and the first 2 segments have been about something else. But we're going to talk about football, and especially now that, honestly, one of the themes that I'm looking for over the off season, kind of, as I start to construct my thought process of what's going on, is next year is finally here. And you're going to see that in the near future. We're going to get through the Egg Bowl. We're going to get through the bowl game and all of that. We're going to see how the portal goes and all that. But Ole Miss being in contention for a 12-team playoff in 2024 and potentially a home playoff game in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium, which would be the biggest football game in the history of Ole Miss. Can you imagine Ole Miss versus Oregon or something like that in Vaught-Hemingway in December? It'd be absolutely fantastic. Brian Reeves says he's from Amory, Mississippi. Jim Heyman is from Nolensville, Tennessee. Jim used to live in Smyrna. Nice of you to stop by. Jay Cannon, is there a chance to see Austin Simmons today? Man, I hope so. But the main thing that I want to see Walker Howard in this game. That other than Ole Miss coming out of it healthy, I want to see Walker Howard in this football game. Wishing we get Jimothy and Autry. Is that possible? Yes, it's possible. I don't know if it's probable, but it was possible. I just genuinely think that Ole Miss isn't done with Jimothy. Autry, his cousin is Marcus Dupree, who went to Oklahoma, by the way. Who do you think will play in the bowl game? We'll talk about that in the next segment a little bit as well. Let's see. Chad Kelly is the highest paid player in the CFL. Good for Chad. Honestly, good for Chad. And he had a little bit of a rough go of it with the Denver Broncos and all that, but it's nice that he's getting it turned around a little bit. I think Chad could possibly be in the NFL one day. Yeah, he's kind of a Doug Flutie. People that are my age, there's a Doug Flutie track to him. Chad and Dart is the meaning of true grit to me. Yeah. Everybody knows how I feel about Jaxson Dart. My score prediction for today, you know what? I'll put that up right now, actually. Hold on just a second. I'll tell you what my score prediction is for today. Go ahead and put in the chat what you think the score prediction is going to be today as well, so I know what's going on as well. But my score prediction right there, 48-10. That's what I think is going to happen. I think they're going to jump out to an early lead, and then they're going to pull back. They're going to pull back the reins because they're going to try and get ready for Mississippi State. But I think that is enough style points to get Ole Miss where they need to be. Let's see. All right. And let's see. Trick Cornelius again. Why do you think the true freshmen we're getting on the D-line will play and make an impact immediately? Some of them will. Some of them absolutely will. I'm expecting if Ole Miss gets Charleston Collins and Kamarion Franklin, you're going to see them immediately, period. Some of them are going to take a little bit of time. The honest thing is, I'm serious about my thought that next year is here. So don't hear me wrong whenever I say the next year. That's not what I'm saying. The defense in 2025, when all of that front seven becomes mature and Taryn Perkins becomes a junior, that front seven is going to be nasty. And that is what Pete Golding is building. They're going to be good. They're going to have to hit the transfer portal, and they need some players to come back. They probably need JJ Pegues to come back to school. They need either Cedric Johnson or Jared Ivey to decide to play another year. So it's interesting as well. And By the way, the Believe in Georgia Dogs podcast, don't be too hard on him. That's Corey Burton, who does SEC After Dark with me. Yeah, Corey's having a little bit of fun. That was not a shot at a Georgia fan who's been our comments all week barking. That's him making it. So, real quick, let's go to Josh Guest, who is in the Grove. Josh, how you doing, buddy?
Steven, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me, Steven?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Well,
okay.
I didn't think we'd have trouble today. If you can hear me.
Yeah. It looks
not
like
not a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to have to put that out. It was worth a shot anyway. But that's Josh in the Grove. They said the Grove is pretty sparse at the moment. Jerry Moore says, I get the same feeling watching the show as I did fishing at the golf yesterday, relaxing and peaceful. Thank you, Jerry. That makes a whole bunch to me. I like to have a good time. We're going to try again in just a second with Josh and see if we can do that as well. And Josh, can you hear me, bud?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How you doing, man?
All right. Not a lot of people. They're starting to show up now. We got here. Well, I got here a little bit before 6 this morning to set up for the show, and we went on the air at 7, and there was almost nobody. No tents on our side of the road this time, and a lot of tables set out, but not a lot of tablecloths and chairs set up. So not too many people. Of course, it's Thanksgiving break. Students have gone home, and we lost last week, which we don't want to talk about, but just not the number of people. There's several reasons why it may not be as many, Thanksgiving break, that kind of stuff. So it's starting to pick up a little bit though.
Well, what is, like you said, it's kind of a sleepy 11 a.m. game, and we all know what's coming at 11 o'clock. And Louisiana Monroe's not winning. I'm not saying that, but it's a bring your own energy game. What is the mood around the Grove right now?
I haven't been able to pick up on the mood because there's not enough people to get a mood from. And so, no, it seems to be good. I mean, people are starting to, like I said, show up, but there's just not a ton of people. It's chilly. It was in the 40s this morning when we got here. And so, you can see my hoodie on me, and I got a little camo on and trying to stay warm. And I actually thought I put on too much, but it's pretty chilly out here this morning for me anyway.
Yeah, and this is the last home football game that people can check out this year. You can hear David Kellum and the crew on Sirius XM channel 190 or in the SXM app searching Ole Miss Rebels. You can do that if you want to listen to it. What are you going to be looking for in this game?
Well, again, I want some. I think I'm going to walk by some loud music. Hang on. I want to have Sanders and Howard get in the game. I think I said on the air here on the show earlier when we were talking about the game that I hope that each quarterback scores 28 points, and all three of them, and that would be nice to have happen and get some young guys. Am I going out? Am I back in?
Yeah, you're back in now.
Yeah, so get some starters out, let them rest. Maybe let Quinshon get a couple TDs and tie his record so he can break it against Mississippi State in Starkville. That'd be nice. I had to bring that up and talk about that game because I did.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that in bowl games in the next segment. But thank you very much, Josh, for joining us from the Grove. I'll let you get back to your radio show and all that. But pretty cool, man.
All right, go Rebels! Hotty toddy.
Hotty toddy. All right, that's Josh Guest live from the Grove coming in. There's still more to come on Locked On Ole Miss, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. What bowl game is currently Ole Miss in line for, and how will this game affect the next game? We'll talk about that in just a second, but right now I do want to let you know that today's show is time for the Athletic Brewing Company Game Changer of the Week. Yes, the Game Changer of the Week. Let me turn off the scroll real quick. Is Quinshon Judkins. And Quinshon Judkins has completely changed the rushing game and the rushing attitude of people around Ole Miss football, the way that Athletic Brewing has changed the game for non-alcoholic beer. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. Quinshon Judkins will be going to break his own school single season record of 16 touchdowns against Louisiana Monroe. He has 3 to break that record. In fact, if you look at what Quinshon has right now, he has 30 touchdowns. The school record for a career is 37. So there's a chance that record is in jeopardy as well. So we'll see how it goes. He sits at 14 right now, so it seems likely with 3 games left to go. Athletic Brewing Company has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good, full flavor, and well-crafted, just like full-strength beers. Their brews are great tasting and award-winning, and they beat out full-strength beers in global competitions. You can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you or buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use code LOCKEDON, that's all one word, to get 15% off your first online order. That's code LOCKEDON, all one word, at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewingcompany.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all time. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day, and a shout out to the everydayers. Locked On, by the way, has launched the first ever national 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you, covering the top stories of the day and the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. For your second listen, go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube today and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 stream channel. Be part of history. All right. Really interesting stuff there. I'm pretty fired up about that stream channel, and I'm looking forward to popping up there the first time that I show up. So I'm pretty fired up about what can happen there. All right. Ole Miss and bowl games, and Ole Miss against Mississippi State. These are the 2 topics. And as soon as the ULM game gets over, we're going to do a What We Learned episode in the postgame show. Our normal postgame show will also be our What We Learned show. So when it airs Sunday, and when you watch it, if you watch it on Sunday, you will basically get a normal Monday type show, if that makes sense. And then when we do Monday, it's like keys to the game. And then Tuesday's what to watch for. Wednesday is Know Your Enemy. Thursday is why Ole Miss wins. That's our plan for next week. We have Michael Borky, David Eckert, Michael Katz going to come on the show next week as well. It's Egg Bowl week. We have to bowl it out, right? So we'll see exactly what is up with that. Now, I want to talk about this real quick, and we're going to get to the comments before we get out of here today. So just know that I'm not going to ignore anybody. But the Bowl Watch currently, this is where Ole Miss is in line at the moment. This is the 2023 Bowl Watch. If you look at the projections that came out at the beginning of the week, you have it mostly in the Citrus Bowl, which, by the way, just full disclosure, that's 50 miles from my house. I'm going to be elated with a Citrus Bowl. And with what's going on at the Under Armour game that is also in Orlando, I think Ole Miss fans should probably root for the Citrus Bowl too. But I understand that people want the status that come with a New Year's Six. And I think Ole Miss belongs in a New Year's Six. Ole Miss has the resume to be there. But if you look at it, I think the Peach Bowl, I think the Cotton Bowl, I think Ole Miss has a New Year's Six worthy team. And I don't know, and if you're in the comments and say, if it has an SEC team ever went 10-2 and not went to the New Year's Six, and who was that team? That's interesting. The Cotton Bowl against Texas is a thing. ReliQuest is the disaster game, like if Ole Miss lost to State. So I put that on there as well. But we're going to keep an eye on that. The games to watch this week would be these 2 football games. If you're an Ole Miss fan, you need to watch these 2 football games. Kansas State is at Kansas. It's at 6:30 or 6 o'clock Central on FS1. Kansas State's favored by 8.5 points. And Tennessee plays host to Georgia. That's at 2:30 Central on CBS, and Georgia's a 10.5 point favorite. It's one of those things. If Kansas wins the game and Tennessee wins the game, Missouri's resume is done. It's over. It's Missouri doesn't even belong in the top 10 at that moment. I don't care about moral victories and things that got done. They beat a not very good Tennessee team, and they actually, I guess they didn't embarrass themselves against Georgia is about the extent of it. So that will be interesting as well. So we'll see exactly what happens in the New Year's Six at the Citrus Bowl and all of that stuff. Corey with that there beat the brakes off of State, and the New Year's Six committee will have some decisions to make. In my mind, Ole Miss and Mizzou should match up in a bowl and settle debate. Yeah, I would be all for Ole Miss and Mizzou playing in a bowl game. There's no new reason not to. Here's the problem that Ole Miss fans need to reconcile. Here's the problem. At the beginning of the season on Labor Day, okay? On Labor Day, we were all told that the SEC was down. And the SEC was bad and the Pac-12 was great. So now at the end of the year, you can see how narratives work and how the media operates, okay? Now you're looking at a situation that 4 SEC teams belong in the New Year's Six. Literally belong in the New Year's Six. Because I'm not saying Missouri doesn't belong in there. I'm saying Ole Miss just has a better resume than them. 4 teams from the SEC belongs in there. That would be 33% of all of the 12 bids in the New Year's Six and playoff taken by SEC teams in a year that supposedly the SEC was down. You have Jaden Daniels that is going to need style points because everybody says he shouldn't win the Heisman and it should go to Bo Nix or Michael Penix. Why? Because they decided Labor Day it needed to be there. Jaden Daniels is the best player in the country. He has a better resume than RG3, who won the Heisman, and even RG3 says LSU has lost too much. So it's a narrative from the national media all trying to bring down the SEC. Colin Cowherd comes on there and talks about the profile of the SEC is going to go down. Look at how many people watched Michigan and Penn State. Well, people watch Michigan and Penn State because they want Michigan to fail. Okay, I'm getting off on a tangent right now. I understand that. So we'll see. Ole Miss does need style points today. It just does not need a 38-24. It doesn't. If you want to go to an Access Bowl, if that is your goal, you do not need a 38-24. You need a 48-10, something like that this weekend. And you need some semblance of style points against Mississippi State. And if that happens, you can point to your victory over LSU. LSU is going to need to really play well to close out the season, or LSU needs to play well to close out the season. If that happens, that win against LSU is going to be your benchmark. That's a top 15 win. And it shouldn't be discounted at all. It should not be discounted at all. Let's see. Before we get out of here, Jesse Shelton asked the question, where can I purchase the t-shirt like the one you're wearing? If you have a link, please share it. I'm going to be honest. I got this at the military appreciation game in 2018 when they played South Carolina. I bought it in the stadium. I imagine that this shirt will be for sale in the stadium today. Or check the official site. Because this, like I said, this was an Ole Miss type shirt. And let's see. Jay Cannon says Ole Miss 55, ULM 7, USM 28, State 17. You know, before we get out of here, and we're going to shorten this a little bit today. I understand that. But if Mississippi State doesn't front run, if USM gets off to a good start, USM might win the game outright. Period. Because Mississippi State, anytime an interim coach becomes the coach, and we've all seen this, whenever it looks like it's over, the players know. Think about Louisiana Tech in 2011. Any type of situation to where there's uncertainty about your future. all of a sudden, if something bad happens and it turns into a hope you can win, not believe you can win type situation. And once that hope is gone, you fold like a cheap suit. And if USM gets off to a good start, USM can give them trouble. Now, I do have questions. Will Rogers going to play? Is the running back going to play? I'm sure they're all going to be healthy for Ole Miss, but I've said all week, and I will continue to say, whoever scheduled USM 5 days before Ole Miss either needs to be fired with cause, or he's an Ole Miss fan, or if you're a Mississippi State fan, both. Interesting. And real quick, I'd like to see how the Pac-12 would do against LSU, Ole Miss, Alabama, Georgia, and Mizzou. Not well. Not well. I think the best Pac teams that would do well against SEC level competition would be maybe like Oregon State. I think they're the team that's most built to do it, honestly. So thanks everybody for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen. Every day or tomorrow, we will look at the keys to beating Mississippi State and the victories in this year's Egg Bowl. For your second listen to Locked On. It is launched its first ever national today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top stories of the day with local experts on the Locked On plus our national shows that cover every league. For your second listen, go to Locked On Sports Today or YouTube and subscribe for your first ever national 24/7 sports streaming channel. For those of you on YouTube, we will send you there right now. Take care. Hotty toddy. Good luck, everyone.